the safest way that I always say is that it kind of sounds like if you take Pink Floyd and you take punk rock and you put just a little bit of hip hop in the middle and you squish them all together.
See, that's cool. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Like a little dusting,
I never really know what to say. I don't know about you guys.
I've been just telling people it's rock music.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Innersleeve Music Podcast, the podcast taking a behind-the-scenes look at all things music. I'm Cassius Morris, Joe Pacheco joining me on the line. What's happening, my man?
Excited, man. Got my boys Atsuko Chiba on this one, man. Really excited to get these guys on the show.
That's right. This is a big one, man, for anybody who's a fan of, all different types of music, Joe, because I feel like it's hard to really put your finger on a genre for these guys. But if you like the indie scene, if you like great music, you will like this episode and this group. And if you want to connect with them, we have all their links down below for Atsuko Chiba. So make sure to go say hello, connect with them while you're on your way down to subscribe right here on SoundMojo. Hip-hop mogul Diddy, a.k.a. Sean Combs, a.k.a. listen, let's save some time and spare all of his various names, has just admitted that he pays Sting $5,000 a day. That's right, a day, Joe, for sampling Every Breath You Take without permission.
That's gotta hurt, man. Really, it's gotta hurt.
It's insane to think that that's what people survive on, in a month most of the time. And this guy's paying it out every day. Now, this came from a resurfaced clip of Sting's 2018 interview with The Breakfast Club, in which Charlemagne the God asked him about this. And now it seems that Sting was under the impression, Joe, that he was receiving $2,000 a day. And then Diddy jumped on Twitter and said, actually, it's $5,000 a day, and that he still loves Sting.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's I've been asking this since 1997. Since I heard that song, I'm like, why would they sample it and not just re-record it themselves? And the publishing would still go to Sting, whoever wrote the song, but you wouldn't be nailed for sampling, which is now you're paying $5,000. Dude, can you imagine? It's been 20 years, $5,000 a day.
That's insane.
Wow.
It's actually crazy to think about. I mean, you think it's fair to say at this point that Sting could retire and just make money off his catalog, right? For sure.
A long time ago, he could have. And imagine this is just one song of that massive The Police catalog, not to mention Sting's personal solo, which also has some massive hits. As we saw, Juice WRLD made the same mistake, right, of sampling Fields of Gold from
that's the thing.
The 1994 album, I don't understand. With this day and age, I understand at the beginning of hip-hop, sampling records and all that stuff, the technology and even the knowledge of what you should do or can't do. But in 1997, at that level, it's not like he was a young kid upstart in his bedroom trying to put out a beat. I mean, he already had money, had experience, had the lawyers, had the deals. Should have known better, in my opinion. Wow, now you're paying, it's like the butterfly effect. One little decision, and then you're paying for $5,000
years down the road, right? And I mean, you make a great point, Joe, because that's the only case I could have made for Juice WRLD. I think at the time that Juice WRLD made Lucid Dreams, he was still relatively unknown, and that was the first song that actually propelled him into stardom. So I mean, it's got to suck that you're one day you're a guy in your room, like you're saying, trying to make a hit. The next thing you make a hit, and then you get hit for 100% of the royalties. Not just, I mean, I don't even know how much this would be equivalent to per day. But if we look on YouTube, Joe, Lucid Dreams has almost 1 billion plays. So you got to think Spotify, Apple Music. Sting is doing it. Listen, if Sting is hiring on his team, I feel like we should send our resumes, Joe.
Oh man, I'm thinking Sting's notorious. It's been going on throughout the years. It's notorious, because I think even Andy Summers wrote that riff to Every Breath You Take, and Sting. I don't know, I don't want to start projecting, but I remember reading where he literally flipped and it's like, no, it's mine. And got away with it, and that's probably why you got all those fist fights back in the police days, between each other, when money gets involved. I mean, and serious money. We used to have jokes when I'll still use the same joke if I'm in a new project and I'm like, let's have our arguments now before there's money.
Before there's contracts.
It gets ugly and stuff. So have your arguments right off the bat. But I mean, lesson learned, and to anybody out there, do not sample, or at least clear the sample first. It might be expensive, but look how expensive it is now.
It's going to be a fraction compared to what you end up paying, right?
Exactly. And they love that situation of like I've known people who have been sitting on disco catalog from the 70s and the 80s, just sitting on it. They own it and just like, I'm going to wait till somebody sample. Oh, claim. All right. Claim. And they make their money on that, you know?
Wow.
So,
because they know somebody's going to bite.
Exactly. And look, you know, there's always a resurgence of disco beats and stuff like that, especially in, you know, electronica, whatever. And so, yeah, they're just vultures. And it's their right. Hey, they own the catalog. They paid for it, right? So it's like, oh, you want to use it? No problem. They love after the fact because you can't really get away with it anymore, right? You can't pull it off the shelves or
it's already out. Somebody's heard it.
Exactly, right? So it's like, and look how much money these songs generate. Like we were just saying, that's just YouTube you saw, right? So like there's streaming, and then there's the video, you know, and then there's radio play.
Even some radio play, Sirius radio, you know, all that stuff. It's definitely still pays.
Play. And can you imagine like even advertising campaigns, you know, eventually, or somebody that syncs it for a movie. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching.
It's insane. It's a good day to be Sting in 2023. So make sure to let us know down below what you think of this. Is this outrageous? Or as Joe's saying, is this their right? It's their music. We want to hear what you guys think down below in the comments. Rock icons Motley Crue are back in action with the dirt that they've become famous for through their tumultuous career. Now, Motley Crue has responded to, of course, Mick Mars, founding guitar player, suing the band for many different reasons. And Motley Crue, Nikki Sixx, and other representatives of the group have a lot to say about this lawsuit, Joe, as we see here covered by Variety magazine.
Yeah, I mean, this all started with Mick having spoken with Carmen Appice, right? And then he started to throw out some stuff out there. And like, I always hate commenting on these things because I don't know the full story. You know, we're sort of speculating and whatever, you know, what he says, she says, sorry, I'm really bad at tongue twisters. But yeah, it's like, but I mean, from what I've heard and gathered, you know, you have Mick's side of like, yeah, he wanted to retort because obviously he's been battling for 50 years with this. I can't even pronounce the affliction or the
I think it's ankylosing spondylitis. So yeah, you know what?
Give the man a beer, man, because I don't know. Like I wouldn't even be able to. I can't even find it on the sheet.
Yeah, but it's a spinal disease that basically. Yeah. I remember he described that it fuses your bones together. So it's apparently he's been going through this for the last 25 years, and it's apparently incredibly painful. That's why even in any photo you see of them, you can see his spine, right? So it's. So, ultimately this ended up with him not being able to tour anymore. And the long and short of it is Motley Crue said, look, if you're not touring, you're not making a penny from us. And they finally ended up settling for 5%. Now, Joe, what do you think of this? Because for me, I'll give my thoughts. The idea that Mick Mars isn't owed anything is just wrong to me. When you think about any other job, any other corporation, you have a pension, you have things set up for the future for when you can't work that you're still going to have a cushion. Now, look, it's not like Mick Mars is out here making pennies. I think we all understand he's made millions and millions of dollars. But the reality is there's also a lot of inflation on what these people actually have. I mean, a lot of these guys don't have as many millions as you might think. And most of these people are not quite set for life. So what do you think, Joe? I mean, for me, I think it's kind of dirty to say he's not owed a penny. I mean, that's harsh.
Yeah, because I mean, what they say here is retiring from touring is resigning from the band, which, okay, you can make up those rules as you go. I don't know, but I mean, like, he's, they're not going to, I don't know. Are they going to record and release new stuff? So no, because they're pretty much just touring and they're going to keep touring until they can't. And from what I read, like, they wanted him give up your 25% of the band and here we'll give you 5% of the touring. What are you, crazy? I'm going to give up 25% of Motley Crue that I've worked, wrote for, toured in pain for all those years.
Yeah.
And wrote those riffs and all that. Like, I mean, I just find it's a bit ridiculous. They have John 5 now to replace him. Fine. But, and then you have the touring guy, like the crew, and saying that, okay, he was forgetting chords, playing the wrong song at wrong times or missing stuff. So they had to have pre-recorded stuff ready to go just in case he's playing the wrong song. They will, flip the track and it'll be the right song. and stuff. So it's kind of, and I understand that frustration from the band. You want to do the best for, people are paying hard-earned money for your show. Not that these guys, I think, are worried about people paying hard-earned money.
Yeah, well, they're charging way too much though, even at that, right?
Yeah,
so I mean, hopefully somewhere in their mind there's a level that they want to keep it.
Yeah, so I can understand that as well, but just to sort of pull a move like that. Anyways, I'm the stick with Mick kind of crew, and hopefully this resolves itself amicably. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say where it's going to go from here on.
I would agree. From where I'm sitting, I've maintained that I still think Mick Mars is the best part of that band. I think he writes the best solos without that guitar sound. I really don't know. I mean, Vince can barely sing. Nikki Sixx is a fine bass player, but he's nothing special. And I mean, Tommy Lee, he's a fine drummer, but again, he's no Travis Barker. So it's, I think Mick Mars is really, he's the strongest link. That's just my opinion.
Well, this is like my first love as a rock band was Motley Crue. I was so young, bought that album, still have that album, Shout at the Devil. I love Tommy as like a sick groove, the whole Dr. Feelgood groove. He's And like you said, and Nicky is the writer. He's the writer, man. We get that. But you can't, those iconic riffs. And, even though I went on to the whole Van Halen and Steve Vai and all the Shredder stuff, I always loved Mick because he played for the song. Those solos are so iconic, and stuff. So anyway, this is just feelings at this point. But I mean, in terms of legal and stuff, we don't know the full story. So it's just sad because of all the ways it could go, this is how it's going to end. It's kind of really crappy.
And it's a lot of bands right now. So look, I think that's the only reason we care is because of our feelings and attachments to the music. That's ultimately the only reason that we're drawn to this. So make sure to let us know in the comments what you guys think. Motley Crue, they're not going away mad. They're just going away.
Stick with Mick.
Yeah. Another week, another show here at SoundMojo headquarters. We had the honor and pleasure of going to cover the July Talk and Crown Lands concert in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Now, this went down this past weekend at an incredible theater, Joe, the Windspear. So if you think your local place that you would go see a really nice play in your city, a beautiful auditorium, that's where this concert went down. It's funny, Joe, too, because I watched the crowd at this show transition from deciding to sit down to deciding to stand. I feel like that takes so much longer at a theater show because you feel so formal. Like you're sitting there, there's ushers. Yep. I mean, I don't know how many times you've seen shows at theaters. I'm sure plenty.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Did people get into it? Because it's I've seen jazz and a lot of classical shows. So it's more, proper sit down, watch, clap and cheer or whatever. But I love those theaters because it's such a cool, they're so nicely designed, acoustically pleasing. And then you get to see this, all, rock metal show in there. It's just such a contrast, I'm sure the people who built this never thought there would be, there's going to be a heavy metal band in here playing,
That's the thing. And you see the staff, their eyes are this big because, they're used to see it. Yeah. So I love it. It's a cool dynamic. We went in there and the show was opened up by Crown Lands, who, if you guys aren't familiar, I have two band names for you that if you like these bands, you will definitely like Crown Lands: Led Zeppelin and Rush. Joe, I mean, these guys, it was like I said in our 60-second review, it was like going back into a time machine. They came up there, everything from the outfits to the instruments to the way that they were laid out on stage, it just looked like you went back to the 70s. They had a big gong on the stage. They were hitting it. They had, the double neck acoustic that was up on a stand, the long hair. I was really impressed with these guys, Joe. And I did see them once before in a small venue. I actually got to shake their hand after. That's how small the venue was. So to see them in this 1,000-seat theater with new music, new aesthetics, and new sort of approaches to what they did was amazing to me.
Yeah, no, I'm really fanboying over this band recently, especially even we tried to get them on the show early on when we started the podcast, and I still want to. for sure. Because I heard them, and it's funny because like I'll admit right now, like I never thought of myself as a music snob, but like getting older, there are certain things I'm just going to naturally be snobby towards. And like Greta Van Fleet, unfortunately, gets that snobby attitude for me for some reason. As soon as I heard them, I was like, what is this? This is like Led Zeppelin. And it's just too close for comfort for me. Yeah. Then I throw in Crown Lands, and it's literally spitting image of Rush to the point where I can name you the actual songs that inspired the song I'm hearing. But for some reason, I don't feel like snobbing out on these guys. So I'm definitely like, why do I snub one and not the other? But anyways, these guys, it's just, they're really good. And you're lucky to have seen them. I can't wait to catch them on a show here in Montreal if they come by again. But that duo on top of that, all those sounds coming from, already people were tripping on Rush being a trio and putting that sound, and these guys like, let's do it even better. Let's do a duo,
That's the thing. Seeing all that sound coming from them, from two people, was hard to believe too, because I was sitting there and I'm like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around how they're doing it. And then I saw the guy's feet working. So he was playing stuff with his feet, you know what I mean? And I'm like, this is just a level of musicianship that is very strong. I almost would say, Joe, that like, I'm not going to say they had a better set, but they were almost more impressive than the headliners in a way. It was just so impressive. It was like, how are these guys doing this? But whereas July Talk, it felt like more of a safe bet. There's a bunch of people on stage, so you know how they're going to pull that off. But Crown Lands, I would say, again, anybody who's a fan, especially of prog rock, go see this band because you will not be disappointed.
They're very similar to like the band we have on the show today, Atsuko Chiba, very experimental. And like, we always say it's a performance, but really like in these guys' case and Atsuko as well, it's like, man, hitting the pedals at the right time. They're even controlling the lights. With Crown Lands, I know I watched an interview, like the guitar player is also, like you said, playing with his feet. So he's playing some bass, low end bass stuff, triggering MIDI stuff, like, so it's like it's a performance besides just the actual just playing your guitar kind of thing. It's everything else, because you miss a cue, right? Like the show's different all of a sudden. Anyways, enough about Crown Lands. What was July Talk like?
July Talk, let me tell you guys, they came out and ripped. They have so many different types of energies in their music. They had some songs that were just straight up punky, kind of rock and roll. Then they would go into a song that was like a theatrical, like sort of cabaret style, like 50s song that was like very performative. Then they would go into like pop stuff, So I got to be honest, July Talk is not a band that I was familiar with before this show. I honestly don't know, Joe, if I could name many songs by them. So that kind of made it fun because I was going in and getting my first exposure to a band in their natural and probably strongest environment. So, that's my biggest compliment, would be that they came out and they could do so many different styles. Also having the dual vocalist between Leia and Pete was definitely very cool as well. And they both, Joe, the level of live performance to me has almost made me rethink my support of backing tracks. Cause we've always heard that Motley Crue and Ozzy, all these guys, they use vocal tracks. I've always said, just let them do it. It's no big deal. But when I saw that these guys were singing like this 100% live, I'm starting to think there's no excuse, because look, if you can't cut it, somebody else can.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, like I said, like if it's to support, like, let's say example, I always bring up Def Leppard, right? And they all sing their 5-part harmonies, or like what I'm trying to get at is if it's going to make me as an audience member be like, oh, I missed that part, or it's not as big sounding as I pictured it. Yeah, it would. But then my brain will automatically flip and say, well, it's live, it's normal, like we can understand that. But if it, adds to the whole experience, then I don't see a problem. But if it's like you're faking it, or whatever, that's a different story, that I'm not into.
That I would definitely agree with, so overall, this show was very strong. I think the performers were the highlight. The weak points of this concert overall, I would say, would be the stage set and lighting design. For Crown Lands, they really had nothing to speak of. They had July Talk's logo hanging behind them and their instruments. The lighting show for them, I would have to say, I've seen a lot of shows, it was just very, very basic, especially for Crown Lands. For July Talk, it was a bit better. but it was really hard to see them, Joe. They had like this whitish lighting, and basically it was casting shadow on their face. And I've seen that done in a way that you can still see the band. This wasn't done like that. For you, is that like does that bother you at a show, or do you not care and you're just feeling the music?
It's funny that you say that, because again, I'm bringing up our guest Atsuko Chiba. They did, and this is like, they're really an independent band, right? They're in a small club, and they were playing in the round, right? And like that's the only thing I missed was like, it would have been nice to have a spot on each guy just to really highlight him a lot better. So it was a very dark venue, and because they weren't playing on the stage where the lights are all set up for the stage, they literally were in the darkness, you know.
Right.
In terms of July Talk, it's interesting because I wonder, like, it's not the normal venue maybe, so like the light system had to be improvised maybe a bit more, but then again, you know, like you said, like whoever's the lighting director or somebody would have said, and I'm sure that place has their own light system, you know, it would have been a little bit more targeted somehow, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I guess it would bother you, want to see who's singing, but then again, was that on purpose? Because some artists like it that way, but yeah,
that's the thing. So I kind of got that vibe that it might have been. And, you know, other than that, like I said, the performances were really strong. The videos on the screen, too, were a bit disjointed. There were times where it was normal visuals. Then sometimes it would be like random visuals. Then they would try to chip you out a little bit. So there wasn't really a theme there. So that's, you know, ultimately, I'd still give this concert an 8.5. It would have been a 10, though, if we would have maybe had like a more cohesive set design and show. But again, I'm not knocking too much off that for those reasons, Joe. And I think this was a really solid show. So shout out to Crownlands and July Talk coming out swinging. Now it's time to hop into our interview segment of the show with Atsuko Chiba, an awesome group coming out of Quebec. As Joe mentioned, you just got to see them, and this was a really impressive show right in the middle of the crowd. So I'm sure you talked a lot about this and probably many other topics with the group.
Yeah, like I've been a fan since maybe 2012, 2013. Just love their work ethic. I love the vibe. Like I was like, at the time, I remember like trying to think of putting together a project, a band myself, and I had certain ideas of what I wanted to sound like. And then I happened to be backstage while they were doing sound check for a show, and then I heard them play, and I'm like, that's the sound I want.
That's it.
I said it. That's the sound I'm going for in my head. I've been a fan ever since. And, you know, I always try to like, hey, what's up, guys? You know, like I make friends with them. But yeah, super talented guys. And I just respect like they have such a hard work ethic. The music is proggy, psychedelic, experimental. And the fact that like, you know, they just released their album, Water, and they did the about a month ago, it was March 9th, we went for the album launch, and I've been at this place called La Sala Rosa in Montreal many times for many different bands. I played there myself as well, but when I walked in, I show up with my tripod and my camera to get some footage for this show, and I'm watching, I'm like, there's nobody on stage, and then I'm like, there's a crowd of people. I'm like, well, where are they? And I realized, oh, they're in the middle. They set up in the middle. A little stage, as you'll see in the images, a little stage, and I was like, oh, this is cool, like this is different, for the city. Anyways, they went on to put on an amazing performance. I taped the whole show, and you could hear me screaming and whistling. I won't play those parts during the interview.
I want to hear them.
Yeah, but definitely was a great turnout for the band. They were super happy to have a successful album launch show, and they're currently on tour as we're recording this somewhere in the States. I'm not sure exactly where. So
make sure to hit the links down below, guys, if you want to find out.
Yeah. So, anyways, without me gushing more and more, Cassius, unfortunately, you weren't there. You were under the weather for the interview, so I was left to my own devices and tried my best. So anyway. So without further ado, here's Atsuko Chiba. All right, so we have the boys from Atsuko Chiba here on Innersleeve. Thanks for joining the podcast, guys.
No problem.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
So we have Eric, David, and Kevin from, we're missing Anthony and Karim, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, let's just go straight into the album launch that I just witnessed a few days ago. So how did it go? Did it meet your guys' expectations, like and all that craziness?
Yeah, I mean, like it definitely blew our expectations out of the water. That's for sure. I mean, like we knew that a bunch of friends and stuff are going to come by and want to support us and stuff, but we were really surprised by by how many people showed up and how many people were really supportive and into the idea that we had with the whole 360 stage and projections. And yeah, it was really cool. It was it was a lot of fun.
It's been something we wanted to do for a while. It's just like never had like the means or it was like never feasible, right? But like we were finally able to do kind of what we wanted, to always do, I think, in terms of like an audio visual experience.
Yeah, I know. Like, I was surprised when I got there. I was like, I showed up on my tripod. I'm like, oh, where am I going to put myself? And I realized, they're in the middle. I'm like, wow, this is cool, because that's usually reserved for the Metallicas, the Def Leppards, at the big places, So I know, like, I came with 2 colleagues, and everybody was just like, it's so cool that they're in the middle. Is it always like this? I'm like, nah, dude, this is the first time I've seen this venue this way and a show in terms of in the city like this, So whose idea was it? Like, how did you guys think about it?
Well, I mean, like playing closer to the crowd than like playing like a, like kind of like house show style, like right up with the people is always like way better because the vibe that you get is like way more intense. So the performance isn't always better, but there's a really electric vibe for sure. But our label Mothline has been doing several events there for the last couple of years, and they've done like the stages in the middle with bands playing on the permanent stage as well. And we kind of got the idea there. And then our drummer Anthony is the one who kind of like conceptualized the light and projection idea.
In terms of like the like your setup, you guys have a pretty looks like complicated setup. It seems like it's modular in a way because you guys are pretty damn quick at putting it up, So like, I was just I took some pictures, so I'll have it here on screen as you guys talk about it. But like, just maybe go through the setups.
Yeah, it looks more complicated than it actually is in reality. Because there's just like cables everywhere, and you see keyboards everywhere. But over the years, we were kind of forced to sort of streamline our setup. So all the keyboards that you see on stage, they're all MIDI keyboards that go to one computer, and that's all the sound. We obviously have our guitars and our amps and all our pedals, which looks like a lot too, but we've actually streamlined that quite a bit over the years as well. And then also the projections, which get launched by Anthony and Eric and Dave with the foot pedals and all that stuff. It's all those things kind of come together to create the experience of the show. And it was really nice at Sala Rosa to be able to do that like on our own terms for once. Because we often like we go on tour and we bring all this stuff with us and we set up in like living rooms and we set up in like on regular stages. But like at Sala, we were able to kind of get in there early and really do it the way we've always wanted to do it. Kind of we brought our entire studio to Sala, which was kind of
it was
fun.
crazy.
Yeah.
And it was cool because it felt like we were at home essentially at the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's what I was gonna say. Like, speaking of studios, you guys have your own studio setup. So jam space, recording, hangout, obviously, right, and stuff. So that's cool. So how did you guys put that together?
Actually, less of a hangout. That we got rid of our only couch, I think, like a few months ago.
It's work now.
Yeah, well, I mean, the organ had to come in, so it's like couch or organ.
Yeah, like organ or a PlayStation. I don't know.
Yeah, the PlayStation lost the battle, unfortunately.
How did you get into music and what started it? Like, what sparked the music for you guys? So let's say maybe we'll go with Kev.
I mean, we've all been in each other's orbits for a long time, playing in bands together. So a few of us have been in other bands together. And then right around, 2013? Am I getting that right?
2011.
2011, okay, yeah, sorry.
There you go.
Basically, we had an opportunity to play like a one-off show. A few of us were studying at Concordia University in music. and there was this like sort of Christmas show I think that they were putting on, and it was we decided we were going to do like an improvised set. So we got a few of us got together and we did this thing, and we came up with the name Atsuko Chiba because we were watching Paprika the night before, and then after that we just decided that we had so much fun we wanted to continue doing it. And yeah, well, now we're here. It's been 10 or 11 years I think that we're a band, and that's sort of
like officially.
Yeah, it's sort of the origin story of the band is loosely that. And but yeah, we've all kind of known each other like throughout the years. We all grew up, you know, on the east side of Montreal, been to each other's shows, and then it just made sense at the time to kind of like continue doing it. And I'm personally very happy we're still doing it. It's been a good a nice 11 years together for sure.
Nice. And like in terms of like instruments that you, because I see you have like some modular stuff there, and you know, on your setup you guys have pedals, keyboards, guitars. So I'm assuming you guys are pretty multi-instrumentalists at certain aspects. Like, what did you end up starting with? Did you start with guitar?
I did, yeah. I started with guitar. I guess I kind of like do get around on keyboards a little bit. Like that started a little later. Like for me personally, I just was fascinated with the world of synthesizers and all that stuff. And then that transferred into like learning to play keyboards. I mean, I wouldn't consider myself like by any means a good keyboard player, but I just try to make it. Yeah, sort of like it's very like brutally like just like until it makes sense.
Same here. It's like, you know, you're always just playing simple chords and fix the MIDI afterwards, you know?
yeah, exactly. But, you know, that is one nice thing about the band is that we give ourselves a lot of space to try a lot of different things. And we've all like experimented with different things. And early on, originally the band, we really wanted to get like, we were really free about, well, we still are, but like, we wanted to do like more soundscape stuff and like bring in a lot of those influences in, and those influences still live, but obviously like they molded into other things over time. And so we're really into sound, I think, as a good place to start. And then from there it turns into whatever you have in your hands, whether it's a keyboard or a guitar, you make something with it, you know? So yeah, long answer, short answers. Yeah, I started on guitar and I played.
It's all good. David, like I've always known you as the bass player and like a monster bass player, and so like, but have you always played bass?
Yeah, I've always played bass since I started playing music. Like I started playing in early high school, and I never really stopped, to be honest. Like I just became like obsessed with the instrument and how like versatile I learned it to be, you know what I mean? Like there's so many different aspects and ways to play it and ways to make it sound that I'm still kind of like discovering, whether it's like combinations of pedals or hand techniques or something like that. So it's it's always been like my thing. I enjoy playing other instruments too, but bass is definitely the number one for sure.
Who like inspired you to play bass and pick up the bass?
Initially, I would say it was definitely Flea from the Chili Peppers for sure. Because at the time, especially being like so young and already being into music and like listening to music on the radio and buying CDs and stuff like that, he was one of the only ones that I noticed anyway that was doing something really unique and different. So it was definitely somebody early on that became a big influence. And then also Juana Larete from the Mars Volta was a big one also, because he was one of the first guys that I saw go really crazy with effects on bass. And like I don't think anybody I was listening to was really doing it that way, you know, like really going out there with like crazy shit, not just like some distortion or whatever, you know, some weird ringy modular strange things.
Yeah, it's like in a normal band context, the bass player doesn't get to move around a lot or experiment with sounds, which is what's fun with you guys.
Yeah, and he did. So like that was really cool for sure. I definitely gravitated towards that. And then there's like the list like goes on and on. There's like a million people on that list, and it's always kind of changing and morphing. But
yeah, that's his evolution. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. What about you, Eric?
I'm mainly a guitar player, but I'd like to dabble in the synths too and stuff. Play bass too.
Yeah. That's cool.
We all program drums too, so it's like we don't actually play them.
No, that's it. But like in terms of writing now, like I'm assuming it's a jam sort of situation, right? For the most part?
Always. No, not always. I mean, sometimes it is. Like we took some time to actually, like when we were writing new music after the last album, we took some time to just free jam and kind of record, and we got some cool ideas out of that. But sometimes it's, people bring in songs and we work on them essentially.
That's cool.
Or like parts or like, like little ideas, pieces of stuff. And throughout the pandemic, we kind of had like a few different ways of working on stuff. It was kind of like sometimes it was in the room, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it was just an idea that got passed around from like person to person too. I don't think there's like necessarily a preferred way. I mean, maybe in the room for sure would be the preferred way. But I think I think we all saw that there was like cool benefits out of doing it differently too. I think we learned a lot, like especially with some of like the singles we released between like Water and Trace. Like we kind of just, we were forced to work in like a different way, I think. And maybe it's not like the most comfortable way that you're used to working, but I think it made cool results.
It's interesting that it's like water. I always picture like my life sort of, I go where the water leads me, and it's kind of like that, where in terms of like the pandemic put up an obstacle, and then like water, we go around, over, under, whatever it takes,
Yeah, you find a way.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I was curious, like in terms of like the topics, because I've noticed, like, from 2013, then you had the Memory Empire. I remember was, I think, 2016, right? And like there's Trace. And I noticed like there's an evolution, obviously, which is normal. Like as a band, and as musicians, you guys grow. But I noticed one thing I think I noticed the most was there's a lot more vocals now, I think. That's the impression I got. Like, there's a lot more singing, a lot more vocals. Is that just a natural thing that happened, or was it a conscious effort of saying, "Oh, we have to have more vocals," or it just?
It definitely wasn't a conscious thing. Like I think the inclusion of more and more vocals just grew as Karim grew as a vocalist. As he started becoming like more confident and experienced with his vocals and knowing how to push it and knowing when and where to push it and stuff like that, and how to process it and all those things. I think it just became more and more apparent and more natural for those parts to be there,
Also, I think that with the natural evolution, it sort of became like somewhat of a conscious decision with time to leave space for vocals to exist. But that really happened much after we realized we could even do it, I think. So it was like a natural evolution to get there. But on this new record, I think we wanted to explore that a little bit more. And I think every song has vocals, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, every song has vocals.
Yeah. But yeah, and I think as we saw, Kay like performing the vocals, and we heard it, and I think we encouraged them to go further with them too, and that played into, I think, the writing of the album as well.
Oh, absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, and is it like I know over the years a lot of guitar players are forced into a singing when you can't find a singer or whatever. So was it like was it his choice to sing, or was you guys not your singing?
Well, I mean, he definitely has the best voice out of all of us, that's for sure.
That always helps.
And
it was really an evolution, because as you listen to the albums, I think like the vocals just grow with like every album. There's more and more vocals, right? So it's just
always like kind of did vocals a little bit like beginning, like whether it was like some rapping stuff or like a little bit of singing. He always was comfortable with his voice, whether he was singing like constantly in a band or not. It was always kind of there. Like it just took time to get to, I guess, where it is now.
Well, you and Kay essentially sing on every album or every release, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. Like I like to tuck mine in a little bit more in the background, but push this to the front a bit.
Yeah. I remember you having the power, kind of the screaming vocals a little bit more in like the Memory Empire era.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely did a lot more of that before, but on Water actually is some of the first time where I'm singing like way more on an Atsuko release, and I've never really done that before. So that was a cool challenge, and especially having to play the songs live now. Like we're kind of like rediscovering how to pull them off in the best way possible, because the album and the recording studio is one thing, but one night in one random bar and then another night in a basement somewhere. It's like you got to make it work in all those situations, So it's cool, like playing like the last couple of shows, playing these songs, doing all these like new kind of things that we've never really done before, and like seeing it come across live. It's been really cool.
Topics, like what are the topics you guys like to frequent the most for lyrics wise, or even just like in terms of the song?
It's hard for the three of us to say, because we kind of leave the lyrics up to Karim. Okay. So I think on this record he went a little bit more inwards with his lyrics. Like he sort of like, instead of, I don't know, I'm speaking from my point of view. Like I've had some conversations with him about them, and I know that that's where he went with some of the topics, but yeah, it's really more, it's Karim's domain when it comes to lyrics and exploring words and meaning with the lyrics. It's really a thing. But I know that he would say right now probably that like it means whatever you want it to mean.
Oh my God, of course.
Because I think he often leaves a lot of room for other people to interpret what they want to interpret from it, and sort of have it take on meaning differently for different people. And I know I'm like the worst with lyrics. Like I think the band can all attest that I get all the lyrics wrong, not just our own songs, but like everybody else's songs. And so I feel like sometimes I'll hear his lyrics and it's not, I'm not even hearing the right words and they still mean something to me. So I think words are they're just like a way of painting a picture for your mind to kind of like fill in the gaps,
I remember, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the artist Seal.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, okay. Well, because I'm a big fan, like from the '90s, the earlier albums.
Forever, baby. Isn't Batman Forever the Kiss?
Yeah, best soundtrack.
The best soundtrack. Such a good soundtrack.
Every song, man. Every song on that soundtrack is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but the album, I remember like reading and like there's no lyrics in the album. And I remember in an interview saying, it's because I want to leave people interpret, like you just said, interpret what I said and take it with you. And even John Mayer, having seen him a couple years back, he was saying at the Bell Center, he was saying like, I write these songs and then I record them and then I tour them and then you guys take off and you live your lives with them, so your wedding songs or, whatever that song may mean to you. So it's interesting way of looking at how you do one thing with it, but somebody else can do something completely different with it in terms of how they perceive it and what it makes them feel, right? Or how they live with it.
But I think we're all fans of that style too, so I don't think we don't have to worry about the lyrics either, type thing. It's like,
yeah.
We were talking earlier about you guys playing in terms of like in the middle or in the round, as I like to call it. But because I know you guys are comfortable in that sense, because I've seen you guys over the years like play house shows, like you said, or garage, or like you have to sort of like, well, okay, this is the venue. There's no PA. We just got to make it work, So like, is there any like funny stories that like or situations that you remember like, oh my God, this was the worst or this was the best? Or
I feel like we could write a book about this.
Yeah, we could. We've literally played everywhere, like from like a barn to like some guy's like living room, where it's like literally like, hey, can we move the couch? Do you mind if we move the couch like over so we could like fit some drums here? And like,
oh yeah, basements like filled with water, like really, really ridiculous.
The worst could have been like with the barn that we played, Kev, that your amp almost blew up in.
Oh man, yeah, right? Like
that was a bad one.
On that US tour there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it smelled like fire.
Oh
yeah, it's really bad.
You guys remember my amp at the end of that? I think it was like a 3-week tour. At the end of that tour, I could have cooked an egg on my amp.
It was so hot, man.
It would get so hot.
I'm surprised the covering didn't melt or something like that.
Yeah.
I also got a memory. I think did you guys? Is it true that if I remember, maybe I'm mixing up things, but like you're playing with skateboarders at one point too.
That was the barn.
Okay, that's the one. Okay, that's what I thought. Like all of a sudden, images of skateboarders just came into my head.
There were skateboarders and like BMXs.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah. It's a cool crowd, though, if you think about it, right? That's kind of the sort of like the crowd that's sort of into sort of experimenting and different kind of music,
Yeah. I was sick at that show too. if I remember correctly. Like very, very sick.
Yeah.
We made it
There's been a few of those. There's been a few of those too.
I always thought of that because I've never had the opportunity to tour, and I always thought, man, what if you don't feel good? Like 5 minutes before the show, the show starts, like, what do you do? Like,
you gotta figure it out.
Yeah, it depends on how bad it actually is, you know. Like, if you can stand up and move your hand like this and sing or whatever, and without passing out, then okay, do it.
Yeah.
You always hope that the adrenaline is gonna kick in, right? And usually it does. Like you get the show, and then the show's done, and you're like, well, I don't feel good now. But like during the show, it's you don't think about it because you're like you only have one thing to do. You have to just do this thing. You do it, and then you get off, and the rest of your life happens. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting how like sometimes a half-hour show, let's say a half hour or a 45-minute set, how much energy and how tired you are off. It's like a crazy like 3-hour workout. It feels like, you know.
Oh yeah, and then you add the load in and load out.
Oh yeah.
Definitely feels like a workout.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I was just wondering, like projection wise, like how do you guys? I always love that projection stuff, you know. So how do you guys like work that out? Like I know now, I didn't know. I always thought it was Anthony on the drums triggering them, but you guys also trigger other ones.
Yeah. So like basically, it runs through Anthony's computer. Like he's the one who creates them and like designs the whole thing. And but we just use like MIDI switches essentially to trigger changes and effects as well, like swells and stuff.
Okay, so basically, if I understand, like you have one computer that splits MIDI to a couple of people, right? So you're basically
so Anthony's computer is like the visuals computer essentially. So he has his SPD also on his drum. So yeah, through his program, he's like sending MIDI notes essentially that trigger a projection.
Okay.
And then me and Dave are doing the same thing, and lights as well. Yeah. So they're both synced together. Yeah. So you could do stuff like cuts too, like the cuts to black or like
it's got to be crazy because you already have to think of your pedal switches, your parts, and then you also have to think of it's crazy because it's really a performance. Like the whole thing is like a performance for the band. So if you miss the lights, you miss the light or something, right? Like
exactly.
It's like a rhythmic thing, you know. It's like if you miss it like one shot, like hit it on the next good beat.
Yeah. And you have to learn to incorporate it in your sequence, you know, of like, okay, like distortion comes on, reverb comes off, light switch, you know, like type thing. And it's like there's a whole sequence to stuff and playing the part.
And nobody, like if somebody misses a cue, you know, like nobody look at each other and stare at that guy, you know, so nobody knows that something was wrong, you know.
Most of the time, the audience wouldn't really notice, but
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We notice for sure.
Yeah, but if everybody turns around and looks at the guy, well, they know something's up, you know. Like I was like, I remember that as a kid, you know, you're playing and it's like when somebody makes a mistake, you're looking. Like I remember somebody telling me, don't look at the person, you know, just let them, you know.
Yeah.
Or once even like playing guitar, if I made a mistake, I would repeat the exact same mistake the next time around, so that people didn't think, oh, it's not a mistake, he did it on purpose, you know, like that kind of stuff. Water, it feels like it's growing. That makes me think right away. What's going on over here with this title? I love titles. Like for me, like a title will inspire an entire piece of music. So just tell us what's the album about? Like, did you guys have a vision, or is it just something that came together?
I'll tell you what the album means to me, and it has nothing to do with the music in a sense. Like for me, like that album represents like sort of like our getaway during COVID. Like COVID, you live in Quebec too, and it's just like all of Quebec was in shutdown, and we only had like limited amount of time to like hang out together and make music, and we found all these ways of making music together. And then like making this record is always just like a nice, safe haven. We could all go to the studio, work on this music together. We got really into biking. We were all biking to the studio together on these massive bike rides and just like hang out, make music, have a good time. And in terms of like what the album means, I don't know if it means anything specific. I think it's just like an expression of what we wanted to do at that moment, I think. And I know that sounds like kind of like sort of like really basic, but it's like, I think that's what everything's about the process, you know, like making music is all about the process. Like for us making music together, it's coming together and enjoying each other's company and like making that, it's like sharing a meal. It's kind of the same thing, you know, like that's when I think about the record, I listen to that music and I listen back to it. Like I think about those bike rides. I think about the studio. I think about like the time that we spent together and like how like the rest of the world felt like it was just like falling apart. Everybody was mad all the time and everything's going crazy. And then we just like, we sort of like look more inward and we turn to each other and like the result is this album. I think that's how I see it.
That's basically like what the lyrics are about, more or less. It's like very much a reaction to like all the things that were happening around us and all the things that were changing and all the you know, when like certain like social political things start crossing, you know, you kind of see like society like react in ways that you didn't expect to happen. So like I guess like the lyrics like in a sense are like in a reaction to like all the different various things that we experienced like emotionally and whatever throughout that time, you know. And yeah, and I guess like it couples into like what Kev was feeling too, because like at the end of the day, it's like it's more of an emotional record than something we've done in the past. So like I guess we just wanted to elicit that same type of response in other people too, you know, because it did for us for sure.
Musically, I think we had like you know, a specific vision for the record. You know, it was definitely, we had like key like points and feelings that we wanted to follow and like go and explore essentially. You know, we wanted like longer parts, more like drawn out parts and like more space and stuff like that. So I think that was an important thought process throughout the record, and we kept it throughout, even though like it's, you know, it spanned like pretty long, the writing of the record, because of like it got cut a bit with like lockdowns and stuff. We kept that in mind, and we kept like, you know, the vision of it really tight the whole time, which is tough to do sometimes when you're writing stuff over like a longer period of time, especially when you're separated too, like physically.
And for us too, specifically, it is hard because we give ourselves permission to go into a lot of different territories with the music. And so for us to kind of stick to one vision is sometimes it's not the easiest thing in the world. Also, we, like you mentioned before, we all play a lot of different instruments, and we're 5 people in the band, so we could be making a lot of sound at all times. And like Eric said, I think on this record, we sort of like went into it with like this idea of restraint and patience and kind of like let things evolve as they need to evolve, give space to things.
That's definitely one thing I noticed as well. Like it breathes a little better. It's like, yeah, you guys took the time to build those and let people get in, especially live, right? Because like, that's probably the best test when you're testing in front of people, you know, like, and like, I remember being there, listening to it and being in the room with all those people and just feeling it build up, almost like an EDM kind of thing where they just let it build up and build up and build up, you know? That's cool. Because like, you know, we're always so used to, it's always like that expression, don't bore us, get to the chorus, you know? It's always like, and songs now are literally like, I got one not long ago as a submission, and it's like 1:56, the entire song, guitar solo and everything, you know. So like, things are getting really short, and I grew up listening to prog and that kind of stuff, so I'm used to like the songs taking a bit of time, you know.
I think it's a product of what we were into at the time too, you know, so that went into it. That's why we had that thought process. It doesn't mean that's like right or wrong either too. It's just like what we kind of were into and we wanted to kind of execute, I guess.
Cool. Yeah. So speaking in terms of like, as you guys are still, well, you're signed, right, to Mod, but you're still indie, or is it like, are you considered not indie?
Well, we work with Mothline now. We're
okay.
Signed to Mothline.
Yeah, so I'm just like curious because like you guys I've seen you guys, like I always say, like you guys have, in my eyes, what I've seen, I don't see everything obviously, but I mean like I always like the hardest working band that I've seen, you know, put stuff together, play those house shows, get in a van, next thing here, you know. So I was just wondering like what's the challenges? Like I know there's always money is always the challenge and stuff like that, but like what are the challenges you guys have dealt with, and like, you know, how did you like sort of improve or like fix it, you know?
I mean, I think a loaded question.
I know.
I think one of the main challenges though is always having like, you know, being able to do what we actually want to do versus what the reality of certain situations are. Like you always want to do like the album release show, but it's just not always feasible in our world right now to be able to like, you know, go to Detroit or something and do that, right? Like We could maybe do that in Montreal, but not everywhere else, right? So you gotta play with what you have, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's why we adapt and we change with depending on like what the show is, essentially, to a certain extent, anyway.
And I think being in a band is a lot of times a labor of love. Like basically it's a challenge the whole way through. Like all of us have to hold jobs. All of us, like we make it a point to meet together 3 times a week at minimum if we can to practice. But even that's hard because we work during the day, and sometimes we're not showing up with the best version of ourselves because we're tired or something like that. Or like, so there's, and I'm just listed a few challenges, but there's so many. It's just like being in a band to begin with in 2023 is not an easy. It's not an easy ask of anyone, like, and taking time to go on tour, being able to even like write as much music as possible, like all these things. If I could be in a band, like if I could just play music 100% of the time, all the time, and that's all I can do, I would do it in a heartbeat, but the reality is that like there's a lot of other factors that contribute to your life, and you have to balance all those. You have to keep all the balances in check for that stuff, And so yeah, I think it's just the challenges are just everywhere. but they're, as long as you stay positive and you always just try to feed the thing that like makes you happy. I think that's always a saving grace. Like at the end of the day, like being a band is hard, but it's also the most amazing thing in the world. So as long as like you remember that on every step of the way, the challenges you face them and you conquer them, and life keeps going.
That's kind of like where working with Mothland comes in handy too, because it's not just us anymore, like balancing like our lives and the band and writing and trying to be as creative as possible. It's like we have a whole other extended part of the family now that's like doing things for us and creating opportunities for us. And
because we used to try to do that all ourselves too, right? Like Dave has booked us like countless US and US tours and European tours.
It's so hard. It's like, like you're at work, like on your phone,
alone.
Messaging people. It's like, it's intense, man,
Yeah, people are unreliable. It's like, or not serious.
And then add into all that the whole social media aspect of things, right? Like now you got to post everywhere. You got to create content that has not that it has nothing to do with your music, but I mean, like it's apart from your music, So it's like, that's what I always say, man. Like, if someone had told me like years ago that like what this would be like in terms of, royalties, in terms of the streaming and making money or whatever, making a living. I'm lucky. I made a living in terms of not only playing music, but like, video, photography, different things, working at radio. So I've made a living in my passion, which is half the battle, I'd say, like I don't get up in the morning angry that I have to go to work, but yeah, there's all the other stuff. And because like, if you did it for the money, you wouldn't be doing it at this point. You know what I mean? Like there is no money yet, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, definitely. I hate that part of it. So like, just kind of finish this thought. Like, what would you change? What's one thing you would change about the industry? The music industry, if you think about it.
I mean, the distribution maybe of wealth that goes on with the streaming services.
Yeah, like algorithms and stuff, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like that's the main form of like income, I guess, for musicians or something, like I would guess. So, a better distribution of income may change a little.
Less complicated, like royalty structures and all that stuff, because it's like complicated, I think, on purpose back then, right? Like,
it still is. I think with everything, radio royalties and like streaming royalties, it's tough.
And there's all these gatekeepers along the way that like don't end up being the musician themselves, and like I guess I wouldn't argue that like we should be making millions of dollars or anything like that, but like it would be nice to earn some sort of fair income based on like let's say Spotify, for example. Like, they built an entire business model off music and content that artists are making around the world. And I've personally feel like the artists that like contribute to that aren't like fairly compensated for that. But it's also at the same time, it's a bit, we live in this like harsh reality where like music has become more available to everyone. And so everybody has access to being able to consume music, but also make it like, and put it up and
release it. Yeah.
So it's the sort of thing where like, it's like, I think I heard someone describe it once as like, if diamonds would grow on trees, it wouldn't be worth anything. I don't necessarily like want to like say that music isn't worth anything, because I think it's worth everything in the world. Like for me, music has like changed my life for the better. And I think for not just me, but millions and billions of people around the world. But yeah, basically the world has decided to commodify it. And now we live in this world where like, it just becomes like content. And like, that's the sad part about it, you know, like that's the sad thing about things like Spotify and stuff like that. Like I love it because it gives me access to tons of music. Mm-hmm. And as a lover of music, I get to have access to all this music. But on the flip side of that, it's like, it just also turns music into this like background noise that people can like turn into playlists and like shopping malls and all this stuff. And it takes like the real value of music away, not the monetary value, but like the sort of like the feeling that you had as a kid when you would go to a record shop and you see a record and you'd be excited to listen to it, and you'd put it on and you'd be like, wow, this music is amazing, because you invested yourself into that music. And people are missing out on that today. I think they're missing out on the real value music, which is the part that like brings you value. Like, yeah. Wow, I said a lot of words there. I'm sorry if I didn't.
Yeah, no. It's funny because I noticed, you know. Yeah, no, but it's funny. I noticed because like I consume a lot of music, especially also like you said, background music while I'm working and stuff. And it's like, I noticed I retain song titles a lot less. Like, because I'm not focused on listening to the album or that specific song. So when someone says, did you hear that song? And they say the title, I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember what it's called, the song. And then I realized, yeah, that's the one you were talking about, you know, kind of thing. So I'm guilty as well, you know. It's like, I love the fact that, because like as a kid growing up, you know, you had to buy a CD or a vinyl, whatever it was. So there's a lot of stuff I didn't get to listen to because it wasn't around. My friend didn't have it to lend it to me or whatever, right? Whereas now it's like anything, anytime, all the time, right?
And that's actually a really beautiful thing. Like it's amazing to have so much access to music. Like I love it because that gets me to consume so much more.
Yeah.
And like the other thing that's interesting with technology too is like it also influences like the way music gets created, right? Like I heard Brian Eno say recently that like in the 60s it was almost impossible to play someone else's music in the studio as you were making a record. And like just that very small change that like now you can like instantly in the studio pull up somebody else's music as a reference for your own music, right? Like completely changes the landscape of music. And that's like the smallest change, but it completely like the fact that we could be making a song in the studio and then like listen to our favorite artist and be like, oh, how did the drums sound? And all of a sudden
as a reference.
Yeah, it's directly influencing your music. Like that's a kind of a big deal. And like that's technology evolving, and like we could say all the good and bad about it, but like there's that's just like, what am I trying to say? Like there's just like a lot of different like ripple effects of it, you know? Like
and now throw in, after all this stuff that's been going on, right? Streaming, sort of coming to grips with it, and like shows and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden now throw in AI into all the whole mix, right? With all that Chat GPT and like all that stuff. It's I love it, but I'm scared at the same time, you know? It's crazy.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Last thing I had to ask you, I was just curious because, you know, I'm always trying to, I can't put you guys in a box, which I love because I grew up playing prog, so I was like, don't put me in a specific box. But I know it's like when something like, oh, what do they sound like, you know? And I'm like, you know, the thing I lean on the most is like, okay, it's like proggy, psychedelic, experimental, you know, it's like all those adjectives, right? So like, how would you guys describe your sound to somebody at dinner that didn't know who you were?
Well, I mean, I think like something like that, you know, like a psychedelic experimental rock or whatever. I like whatever like I say is going to be different than what somebody else says, because like our frame of reference, the things we like, how we view music is different than the person sitting in front of me or whatever, you know. So I think like it doesn't really matter like too much, in the sense where like, you know, people can argue for hours like, no, it's this rock and no, it's this rock. But in the end, that argument is like, you shouldn't be arguing. It's okay to say whatever it is. It's just a word, you know?
Yeah. It's just hard because like those three, like experimental, progressive, like psychedelic, yes, we are that, but those three things are such specific genres of music already.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it is progressive, but prog music is something, right? When you say prog music, like, what do you think?
It means
think
a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of things, but it's also like, I don't know, you think of like I don't know.
Technical, I guess.
Yeah, technical, like the Dream Theater kind of thing. And I feel like that's not us at all, right? Like, yes, we're progressive, but we're not like progressive music.
We take a influence from like a lot of different types of stuff. So like to call it like one specific thing is always like difficult. Yeah. It could be krautrock as much as it could be hip hop, as much as it could be heavy and sludgy or whatever, you know. So I guess like, I don't know, the safest way that I always say is that it kind of sounds like if you take Pink Floyd and you take punk rock and you put like just like a little bit of hip hop in the middle and you squish them all together.
Ah, see, that's cool. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Like a little dusting, you know.
I always tell people like, if like, I don't know where to go with it, I always just say we sound like Pink Floyd, because I feel like if they're open enough to like Pink Floyd, they might be open to our music. I don't know. It's like, I never really know what to say. I don't know about you guys.
I've been just telling people it's rock music.
Good old rock and roll.
Like the plainest. Yeah, it's rock. It's got guitars in it, you know.
Yeah.
It's not a solo.
And then they come to the show and they're totally like, "What's going on over here?" You know?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. No,
they're either pleasantly surprised or they're fucking pissed.
Yeah, exactly. Have you gotten people that are pissed? No. Okay. I thought that was a real story. I was like, wow.
Well, actually, one person we played in Kreuzlingen in Switzerland. We played our set, and I think we only had, I think it was like 45 minutes or something like that, 50 minutes, like not longer than that. And we finished playing our set, and you know, we can't really do encores, and mind you, we don't really like doing encores either, but we can't really do it because, you know, when we go for a show, like we have like certain things like programmed, like with the visuals and everything, that, you know, the set is what it is. We can remove things, but adding things is like challenging, you know?
Yeah, we'd have to add something with no lights or visuals or like different, I don't know.
Which like could be cool, I guess. But, you know, one time at this venue in Switzerland, we were playing and we ended our set and we didn't really have anything else prepared. And a couple of people were yelling like, you know, one more song or keep playing or whatever. And we told them, no, we don't have anything. And we started to get like kind of pissed.
Yeah, it got kind of mad.
Yeah, kind of mad, like yelling things. And
it's a good problem to have, I guess, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So speaking of the future, you guys have a nice little tour coming up across the States a bit, right?
Yeah, it starts in a week.
Looking forward to it? Like any particular, you know, venues or spots you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, like we're going to a lot of places that we've been to before, but we're also visiting spots that we haven't ever played in, like ever. Like Washington is one of them. A couple places in Ohio. It's going to be cool. I don't know. There's a few shows that I'm really looking forward to.
Nice.
Yeah,
it's nice to get back.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. It's nice to get back on tour. It's been a little while. We haven't gone out like on a run like this, where it's like over a week.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see people we haven't seen in a while too, because like we have toured in the US before, so we have made friends along the way, and I'm pretty pumped to see a few of those people. Shout out to Eric. I need to reach you. Any Cadicio.
And the boys in Loom.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Well, anyways, guys, I just wanted to thank you guys for taking the time, coming on Innersleeve, talking shop and talking fun stuff, you know, everything Atsuko Chiba. And is there anything you want to let anybody know? Like, well, obviously we just spoke about the tour and stuff. Like, is there anything else coming up that we, maybe get a scoop?
Not exactly.
No,
it's like
just check
out
our
asking,
Instagram and Facebook for tour dates.
It's like I'm asking for an encore, right?
Yeah, no encore.
Huge shout out to the guys from Atsuko Chiba for joining us on episode number 114 of the Innersleeve Music Podcast. It was an awesome conversation, Joe.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I tried my best, man.
You killed it. Hey, my man held down the fort over here. I love to see it.
It was fun. It was cool because, like, I've spoken to them over the years, even shot some of their shows back in 2018. It's just like, it was fun to get to know them. I don't know them personally. So, to hear that, David, his first love was like Flea. That's what got him playing bass, and so it was good to get to know them, how they work, how they write. Because you make up stories in your head of like, oh, these guys are so cool. They jam it out, but no, they'll bring in parts or stuff that's already structured, and then they work it out. It was also cool to get a behind the scenes look of like how they each trigger different elements of the show, and that they do miss up sometimes, so it's like, it's interesting. The audience would never know. I wouldn't know, but I mean, they know.
That's the beauty of it, though. That's the true artist right there.
Yeah, that's it. So no, it was great. Thanks to the boys for coming on the show and indulging us and all my questions, and definitely would love to have them back. Wish them all the best. Like, hopefully they'll get overseas and start doing some European dates again, and that's what it is.
That'd be huge.
They, every indie band, it's always a money that's a struggle, and holding down a job while then going away for 2-3 sorry, 2-3 weeks to tour and stuff.
One day.
yeah, that's it. So anyway, that's it. I was happy to have spoken with them and like learned a lot more about their process.
Definitely an awesome conversation. And like I always say, I find myself saying this more and more lately. Indie artists, I hope you have your notepads out, because we are giving away game on how to go about it, touring, dropping music, promoting. This is not easy stuff. And we're really glad to have you guys here along for the ride.
I was just going to add, because like even myself, like having done a lot of recording and mixing and stuff, and you work by yourself sort of thing, and you develop certain techniques, or like you trust your instincts, and I find that like when you say like take notes and stuff, a lot of people may say, well, I know that stuff already, or yeah, of course, that's obvious, that's what it is. But the thing is, a lot of times you need to sort of get that sense of like, oh, I'm doing that too. Okay, right. So it's okay what I'm doing. I'm on the right path, or it's normal. It happens to these people as well, not just me, So it's like, it's also a reassurance thing of like, all right, I'm not the only one who thinks this way, Like, so
we're not that unique as we think, especially artists, man. You're so right. So it's that's why we need a community, and that's why we're happy here to have SoundMojo as a community and a resource for all of our awesome artists out there. So we appreciate you guys so much. Make sure to check in with Atsuko Chiba. We have all of their links down below in the description. Say hello on socials. Tell them SoundMojo sent you. I'm sure they'll hit you back with a response. Also follow us on all social media platforms at SoundMojo. We'll definitely contact you guys, and we love to hear what you guys are listening to, what you guys think of all of our latest content. We have 60-second concert reviews coming out on our socials and YouTube as well, along with full-length reviews, full-length interviews, full-length guests. The list goes on and on. The content is never ending here at SoundMojo. Also, hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page and hit the community tab where you can vote on different polls. Let us know what you're listening to and watching. And we have lots of versus battles for different artists up there as well. And we hope to see you guys on the next episode of the Innersleeve Music Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Take care.